The Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
Edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. 250 plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM FM listing nearest you, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Quote, buy and save on home insurance with Progressive's new Home Quote Explorer, only at Progressive.com. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. I'm going to get to the phone calls a little bit earlier today because I spent the entire show yesterday not taking one single phone call from my listeners, so I apologize for that. I had a lot of stuff going on yesterday, and obviously Tillman Fertitta, owner for the Houston Rockets, was kind enough to come on the show yesterday, so I definitely was preoccupied with a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll get to the calls a little bit earlier than usual today, particularly in the first hour. Hour number 2, my man Damian Woody will be on the show with us to jumpstart hour number 2. And a friend of mine, a friend of friends, former tennis player Vince Van Patten, the voice of World Tour, the World Poker Tour as well. I'm going to have him on the show talking to him just a few minutes, in hour number 2, so I'm looking forward to that. But the first order of business to get into today, there's a couple of things, and I'll get into Eli Manning, Daniel Jones with the New York Giants, Jamal Adams, what he had to say about the NFL after getting fined $21,000, what he had to say about the NFL and the state of the league playing for the New York Jets. I'll definitely talk about him as well and some of the things that he had to say. First order of business, however, is to get into Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Why? Because it's Thursday night football. That's why. Why? Because when it comes to Thursday night football, the Tennessee Titans are scheduled to go up against the Jacksonville Jaguars tonight, Game 3 of this NFL season. It's a home game for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 0-2 and find themselves in somewhat desperate situations. The Jacksonville Jaguars have only won 2 of their last 14 games. The Jacksonville Jaguars, less than 2 years removed from an AFC championship game against the New England Patriots, are now considered to be a relatively dormant franchise, a franchise that's simply not getting the job done. And the name Tom Coughlin comes to mind, ladies and gentlemen. You know him very well in New York City. In New York, East Rutherford, New Jersey, to be exact, since that's where the Giants play. There was a Super Bowl championship with Tom Coughlin in 2007. There was another Super Bowl championship in 2011 from Tom Coughlin. Outside of those 2 years, the vast majority of the time, the New York Giants were outside of the playoffs looking in. They simply hadn't made it. And as a result, with former general manager Jerry Reese, with former head coach Ben McAdoo replacing him, Tom Coughlin ended up being the scapegoat, let go by the New York Giants, and utterly and completely disgusted by that. After a year-long sabbatical, he ended up as an executive VP with his old franchise, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And obviously, when you look at what transpired with that team, the way that team led by 55 takeaways was just running roughshod over the league defensively. They had advanced to an AFC championship game, which some people think they should have won, but Blake Bortles was their quarterback, so you knew it was an accident that was waiting to happen. Ultimately, it did with his turnover-prone self, and as a result, the New England Patriots were able to survive and advance to the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, a game in which they lost despite the fact that Tom Brady had passed for over 500 yards that game. Neither here nor there. Here's what this comes down to. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been a shell of themselves ever since. They went from 55 sacks to 37. Their takeaways plunged from 33 to 17 last season. And even though they were still recognized as the fourth best scoring defensive team, only allowing 19.8 a game, and ranked fifth in yards allowed at 311, you still felt like the wheels were coming off this franchise because their offense was so poor and so embarrassing, so ridiculous. The bottom line is they weren't going to win football games. And even after coming off the AFC Championship game, instead of taking care of 6 Pro Bowlers on the defensive side of the ball, which clearly carried them there, Tom Coughlin decided to take care of Blake Bortles. Gave him like a 3-year, $54 million deal. When that didn't pan out, you now have the Jacksonville Jaguars stuck in a situation where, you know what, just not to have Blake Bortles on their squad is costing them about $16.5 million. So what else do? They go in the offseason, they sign Nick Foles. Because Nick Foles led the Philadelphia Eagles to a Super Bowl victory over the New England Patriots. Nick Foles, after Carson Wentz, the better quarterback, went down again last year because he had gone down the year before, 13 games into the season of their Super Bowl run. Last year he comes out there and he gets hurt again. Nick Foles has to take over again. He leads them to victory in 3 of their final 4 games, leads them to a playoff victory over the Chicago Bears, before losing to Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints in a divisional playoff game. And what does that do? That parlays Nick Foles into getting an exorbitant contract from the Jacksonville Jaguars, but he goes down to injury in week 1. And so as a result of that, you're Jalen Ramsey, you're already frustrated enough because you were drafted 5th overall in 2016. Guys like Jared Goff, like a Carson Wentz, like Ezekiel Elliott were all drafted before you in the top 5. All 3 of them got paid. Ezekiel Elliott, $50 million guarantees, a near $100 million deal. Carson Wentz, $107 million in guaranteed. Jared Goff, $110 million in guarantees. Jalen Ramsey's making $3.6 million. Wanted to renegotiate his deal. Tom Coughlin wasn't trying to hear that. As a result, you're frustrated enough in and of itself. But then you turn around after all of that, and what do they do now? Doug Marrone, Mr. Unproven, Mr. Can't Get It Done, literally at the helm while things are falling apart, decides that we're going to play Jalen Ramsey more zone than man-to-man, even though he clearly excels man-to-man. You saw what he did to DeAndre Hopkins last week. And so not only are you compromising him and his individual excellence, you turn it around and you're losing games. So Jalen Ramsey's completely frustrated. He doesn't want to talk. Doug Marrone, as the coach, tried to talk to him, got in his face. What happened? I'll tell you what's happening. It's not really about Doug Marrone. It's really about Tom Coughlin. From what I'm being told, from what I've been told this morning, Jalen Ramsey doesn't want to play for Tom Coughlin and anything associated with Tom Coughlin. I wonder where we've heard that before. That appears to be the case right now. But according to Doug Marrone, all is well. Listen to him talk about his meeting with Jalen Ramsey over the last 24 hours and being ready for tonight's game. Listen to Doug Marrone, head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I mean, Jalen and I have always had a good, open relationship where we've always been able to talk. We sat down yesterday, we talked about, what's going on as far as he and I, and, it's like anything else in this profession. It's behind us now. His focus is on playing and doing the best job for his teammates. team. So, that's behind us right now.
Here's the problem. Doug Marrone ain't doing the best thing for the team. They started off last season, 2018, 3-1. Then lost 7 straight. Kansas City, Dallas, Houston, Philadelphia, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, Buffalo Bills. Of their last 5 games of the regular season, they lost 3 of them. Tennessee, Washington, Houston. Only victories were against the Colts and the Dolphins. And then this season thus far, they've started out losing their first 2 games. So you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. You're Jalen Ramsey. You're on a 5-year rookie deal. You're trying to get paid. They're sticking out their chest, letting you know they got you on lock until 2021, and they don't give a damn how you feel. You ain't getting paid, even though you're the best cornerback in football right now. You ain't getting paid, even though others in your draft class are getting paid. And while you're not getting paid, we're also going to compromise your greatness as a cornerback in man-to-man coverage by putting you in zone. All the while, we're losing 12 of our last 14 games. And we're wondering why this man has a problem. Now, I'm the first one to sit up there and say, you got to conduct yourself professionally, exercising professional decorum along the way. I'm the first one to say that. Because I think that's important, particularly when you're young and African-American, because unfortunately, the actions of the few taint the many. And regardless of how unfair it may be, because that's a reality, you got to think about more than just yourself. There ain't a day that goes by that is not somebody I want to curse out. Let me be very, very clear. But you can't do that in the world of corporate America. Now, obviously, the world of athletics and professional sports is a little bit different, but the bottom line is same stuff still applies. When Antonio Brown is acting like a clown in Oakland, to do that while a collective bargaining agreement is going on is egregious, and it's selfish, and it compromises the objective of the players and their respective agents. That's a problem. And that level of selfishness should never be tolerated. It's inexcusable. And when you see Jalen Ramsey on the sideline jumping up and snapping at his coach after his coach got in his face, that's not a good look. So it's important to say that. It's not advisable either. It's important to say that. But let's understand something here. Jalen Ramsey and Antonio Brown can't be compared. Antonio Brown was playing in Pittsburgh, threw Mike Tomlin under the bus, threw Juju Smith-Schuster under the bus by revealing private DMs, gets to Oakland, gets his guaranteed money. Now the game is played. He's whining and crying over bad feet, showing them nasty yellowish layers of coated yellowness on his feet because of some cryotherapy in France that was nobody's fault but his own. Then you come out, you got a helmet issue. You got an issue with the helmets that the NFL is mandating that you wear. They didn't tell you to wear one specific helmet. They gave you 40 different options. You got 89 dudes on the roster. Over 28 players on the roster in the preseason at the time that you were complaining about the helmet, and only one player, one, was threatening to retire and beefing and whining and moaning and filing grievances against the NFL that he knew damn well he couldn't win. That was Antonio Brown. And even after he got his guaranteed money, then getting in the face of his GM, calling him a cracker. That's what he called them. They called it what they say, even though they tried to deny it. Then he turned around after that. Supposed to have a meeting with John Gruden. Doesn't show up for the meeting. Drew Rosenhaus gets John Gruden and Antonio Brown on three-way, and Antonio Brown records the damn conversation and puts it on YouTube. And got some videographer giving interviews talking about you got Gruden's permission. Well, what the hell were you doing taping the call to begin with? We didn't bring that up. Now, you might have got Gruden's permission to reveal it on social media thereafter, but while you were taping the phone call and ultimately revealed that phone call, you didn't let him know at that time, and by the way, that's illegal in the state of California. Can't tape without a consent of both parties. But that's neither here nor there because we know that Gruden wasn't going to do anything about that. The point is, there's some egregious, childish, immature, very selfish acts on the part of Antonio Brown. That is not the case here with Jalen Ramsey. That's a different ballgame. Jalen Ramsey wants to get paid, and Jalen Ramsey wants to win. And if you can't do both, how the hell you going to then turn around and still ask him to compromise himself by having him do something that doesn't point to the level of excellence that he could put on display, which would justify the dollars he covets? If the dude is a cover corner and very elite at what he does, and I'm here to tell you, he's got the blessings in terms of the validation aimed in his direction by none other than primetime Deion Sanders. Both of them played at Florida State. Both of them were elite corners. Deion Sanders is the best that I've ever seen. As far as I'm concerned, considering the multitude of things that he does, I think it's a legitimate argument that can be made that primetime Deion Sanders is the best football player to have ever lived. Because how many dudes could do offense, defense, and special teams? Deion Sanders did that. He was an elite returner, kick or punts. He could play wide receiver, just ask Michael Irvin. And oh, by the way, there's unquestionably, he was such an elite cover corner, you literally shut off one side of the football field because he was covering it by his damn self. So if we understand all of that, this arguably is the best to have ever lived. And he's vouching for Jalen Ramsey. Let's keep that in perspective and understand that. Understand that. Jalen Ramsey's right to one out. He's right to ask for a trade. And I think a highlight and a spotlight should be put on what the hell is Tom Coughlin doing down in Jacksonville. I mean, somebody wants to know. You come from a defensive background, but you're taking care of a bunch of people on the offense, ignoring your defensive players. What's that about? I understand. In my personal opinion, Tom Coughlin was scapegoated out of New York. I never agreed with how that went down. But that doesn't mean the man's perfect. It doesn't mean there are things he could not have done better. Let's keep that in mind. Let's be honest about that. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. It's going to be an interesting game in Jacksonville. I'd love to pick them to win the game, but I think with Minshew, I don't think their offense is going to do much. Now, some would argue they could have beat Houston last week when they lost 13-12, and you had just given him the ball instead of giving it to Leonard Fournette to try to convert a two-point conversion, and this dude forgets to stretch the football out so it could go across the goal line. And Leonard Fournette is another story for another day. Derrick Henry been balling since he dropped 238 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns against Jacksonville in Tennessee last year. Leonard Fournette, not so much. When's the last time he's had a 100-yard rushing game? Inquiring minds would like to know. I think it's like some January 2018, maybe a little bit earlier, but I'm not sure. But I know it's been a while since he ran for 100 yards. He's averaging 4 yards a carry, which is up from the 3.7 he was averaging last year while running the football. But Leonard Fournette's health has been questionable and his running ability. Here's my thing. He's a stud. He's a man-child, but he's not evasive. He's a power runner. And I don't think longevity and durability speaks glowingly about Leonard Fournette. So you got a questionable running game. You damn sure got a questionable passing game because you don't really have a quarterback, even though Minshew can run with the football and he's a good deep ball thrower. 25% of his passes thus far, by the way, have been behind the line of scrimmage. So I don't know if we can point to his accuracy and brag about it, even though he's capable of throwing a deep ball. But in the end, what it comes down to is that when you look at Jacksonville, they don't have much of an offense. Period. Another reason Jalen Ramsey should be frustrated. Another reason. I expect Tennessee to win this game because I think Tennessee is a hell of a lot better than people have given them credit for. Just ask the Cleveland Browns. Just ask them. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. That's one of the stories I want to talk about. The other was the New York Giants. Starting Daniel Jones, Eli Manning displaying nothing but class yesterday when interviewed by folks in the aftermath of learning that he was being benched in favor of a rookie just 3 games into the season. Now, let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. I have no problem with the move. I love the fact that Pat Shermer, because he's the one that went to Gettleman, he's the one that went to John Mara and said, I want to put this guy in. He stood up at the press conference. Beautiful article written in the Daily News by Pat Leonard, I believe, today, talking about how Pat Shermer is owning this decision. I think that was a damn good article, and I think that's a damn good angle to take. Having said all of that, Pat Shermer's got to step up and get it done too. But I like the fact that Daniel Jones has started because I don't believe Eli Manning should even be there any longer. I think his days are done, at least with the New York Giants. But he has always been class personified. And when it comes to respect, he clearly deserves it. He's a two-time Super Bowl champion, two-time MVP. And yesterday, yet again, he displayed nothing short of class in expressing his support and how he's going to sit around and counsel and tutor Daniel Jones to the best of his ability. That speaks a lot about Eli. Point number 3, Jamal Adams for the New York Jets, going off about the NFL. Didn't know he was playing two-hand touch. Thought he was playing tackle football in the National Football League after being fined $21,000 for hitting Baker Mayfield after Baker Mayfield had thrown the ball. Here's my suggestion. Defensive players need to stop complaining. I know it ain't right. NFL a little bit too soft. You know, they too protective of the quarterback and what have you, but you know they are. Their belief is that it's about dollars and cents. It's about revenue generating. It's a revenue-generating sport, and when quarterbacks go down, that compromises the bottom line of the sport. They got to protect the quarterback at all costs. So with that being the situation, understand that and do everything you can to refrain from hitting the quarterback late. Here's what I would say, and I would propose to the NFL, however, on behalf of defensive players who have just been hamstrung to the nth degree. Emphasize avoiding the head and shots below to the knee and below the knee. Emphasize that. Penalize that at every turn to the best of your ability. And get the dudes focused on hitting below the chin and above the knee. And if they do that, be a little bit more lenient. No matter the hurts, no matter the hits, at the end of the day, if you hit cats, all right, enforce 2 things. Hits below the chin and above the knee. Avoid headshots, avoid shots to the knees and lower, and avoid driving folks into the ground. You can hit them down, but when you push your body into them and press your body on them as they're on the turf, that's problematic. Get dudes to avoid those 3 things, the headshots, shots to the knees and below, and driving them into the ground. And instead, encourage shots below the chin and above the knee. I think you got something there that could really, really help the league. Maybe they're not focused so much on every little thing and protecting the quarterback, and they'll let a hit like Jamal Adams placed on Baker Mayfield Monday night slide. Just a suggestion, y'all. Just a suggestion. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. That was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less only at Walmart. Like I said, I'm getting to your phone calls for the rest of the hour. So feel free to call in at 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way,